The following is a conversation with Ethan Sanchez. Ethan Sanchez is a graduate of Sacred Art School Ateneo de Cebu, of batch 2020 in the UMS cluster, and is currently a first year student in Bachelor of Science in Psychology. In this conversation, we dwell on the issues of online learning, the beauty of struggle, existentialism, Nietzsche, the upcoming Philippine elections this 2022, and much more. I won't hold you long. Here is now my conversation with Ethan Sanchez. Welcome, Ethan.
Hello, Daphne.
Welcome to the Consortium.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
Okay, so how's online learning for you?
Online learning has presented a lot of interesting perspectives to me, mainly because it pushed me towards a lot of ingenuity concerning connectivity issues and overall working in online learning. Sure, it's a hassle because I've tried multiple times disconnecting from the meets or Zooms because of my laptop. It's weird, so I had to like find a way to fix it. But it also gets hard because the demands of the teachers are also very unrealistic because they assume that the digital space is our forte. Thus, they bombard us with projects that focus a lot on the digital without really considering that, oh, we're not good in it. So we get bombarded with tasks like making a short documentary all of the sudden, even though we had almost zero to no experience in making one. And the other perspective I've seen is also from the teacher side because one of my relatives teaches at a school, no? And it's very interesting to see the side of the teachers or the professors too, because they do also exert a lot of effort in their job. It's just that I would say that there's a miscommunication between both teachers and students within their capabilities because the teachers probably assume that the students can do almost anything with their laptops because they were raised in this time and age, and for the students they assume that the teachers know everything because they have taught in this subject, however not on this specific platform. Thus miscommunication would happen. And so I would say that it's between it can range from being easy to being very difficult.
So, do you think that proper communication would fix these assumptions?
I would think proper communication can help fix these this to a certain extent only, mainly because if you're just gonna tell your teacher that we can't really do this or we can't really do that, you're just really informing them of the current situation you have right now. You're not really trying to find solutions toward the problem. So I think it can alleviate to a certain extent with miscommunication, like um, not attending meetings and whatnot, or this project seems a bit too unrealistic in the long run. And to a certain extent, yes.
Okay, from my side, what I realized over the week, also with online learning, is that we don't have like proper reaction. We don't cognitively recognize reactions from our classmates and from our teachers, because
Mhm.
if it's in the face to face setting, you can identify if a person is interested in the topic. There you can shift the tone a bit to become funny to grab the attention back, while if while in the while in the online setting you can't really identify that. Oh, you're not really sure if that person is truly listening at your pre-assumption. While do you think, while agree or disagree, do you find that eye contact is really difficult to achieve in online learning? Because if I stare at my camera, I'm staring at you, but it's really a complex issue, because
Mm.
I really find it like really difficult to speak with one another if I don't see the eyes, because that's where I see like the reaction if someone's again interested or uninterested. So yeah.
Okay. I would say that I would have to agree with you here because in online learning, it's very difficult to gauge whether or not you're teaching the correct way. Because on one hand, because of those assumptions that the teachers have towards their generations, they might assume that we learn best with YouTube videos or streaming videos without really teaching anything. So I would say it does matter because there's an importance towards gauging the reaction of your students to effectively teach. Because if they're not interested in learning what you have to offer, then what's the point of teaching apart from doing what you were hired to do?
Yes, I think that's really true because like sometimes you can really feel that the teacher is really interested in the topic, and then he or she wants a reaction, and it seems really a really hard medium between the student and the teacher to use conference calls. And I hope in this later parts of the years we can slowly adapt to the new normal and have face-to-face classes in the next school year.
I hope so too, man, because it's very difficult now.
Okay, so I want you to react this quote from Sigmund
Mm.
Freud. One day in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful.
For me, this quote is it's very resounding of human struggle and human experience in general because the thing about beauty is that we should give it meaning in order to appreciate it. For example, if you look at a flower, we just as a flower without really seeing how it came to be. We just think of it as a little plant that looks and smells beautiful or good and all that. Whereas if you know the struggle of the flower in order to grow, you kind of appreciate it a lot more because you see that it has literally risen from the earth and worked its hardest in order to shine. An example that would be Vincent van Gogh. Although his works were very critically acclaimed in his after his death, though I would say that one of the only reasons why his works were popularized in the first place was because of his life story involving a lot of mental illness and the struggle towards making art that is still beautiful. It's somehow sad in a sense that it reflects his struggle and journey as a human being. So, in reaction to this quote, I would say that I would agree with Sigmund Freud a lot because it really captures what makes life truly beautiful. And it's not the ending of human life that makes it truly beautiful. It's the struggle that works towards the ending. So another interesting point to look at regarding that quote is the importance of the importance of struggle in life because I've already talked about how struggle makes life beautiful, but not really its importance because your struggles in life, although they're very annoying to deal with, it's what defines you to a certain point because you've been pushed to your utmost limit and your actions towards those struggles can show who you really are. And through this quote, it really illustrates the beauty of the human person or the human being.
Have you ever experienced a struggle where you realize that at the end that the struggle didn't matter at all?
Yeah, I have experienced that before because personally, I think a lot about the things I have done in the past. And when it comes to struggle that had no meaning, it was very hard to somewhat justify my actions from that day or from those days because if I look at my life using the definition I gave earlier, it would then mean that my struggles during that time were pointless or meaningless because there was no point to doing any of it. However, I would still say that these pointless struggles, so to speak, are still very important to what makes you you, because of the fact that these struggles, what or the person you become during these struggles, can also define who you are under pressure. And seeing as how I reacted during those times, I would say that I have a good grasp of what or who I am thanks to those pointless struggles. So it wasn't really pointless in the end.
Can you say it again? Grass under pressure.
Um,
That
wait.
was beautiful.
Um, once, uh, grasp on the wait. Let me remember what I said. Hold up. Once you grasp the person you are under pressure, you can understand who you really are and understand more of yourself, because you only know the you can only know the calm self from a surface level standpoint. However, these struggles would bring out the deeper parts inside you that you never knew were there.
Okay, that was beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
it's similar to a quote from The Little Prince.
Mhm.
To add, it is the time you wasted for your rose that makes your rose so important.
Yeah,
As you mentioned earlier about the flowers also. So currently so where was I? Okay, so the rose so important. For you, what has been like the most beautiful thing that that happened during the shutdown and the pandemic, where you realize that life is still life is still beautiful in a sense that though there's still there's still a huge amount of struggle, you can say that there is still a certain beauty to it.
I would say that it is the most beautiful thing that I've experienced this quarantine was my own personal journey, no, to becoming to eventually becoming more mature as a person. Because of the quarantine, I have realized so many wonderful things, so many sad things also. And seeing as how the world, even though the world has technically come to a halt because none of us can go out anymore, our lives still don't stop there. In the midst of universal struggle, there's still some people that manage to make the most out of it and turn it to a truly beautiful thing. And seeing that, I somehow got inspired from people who would never give up, even in times of struggle. And I somehow applied it to my own personal life. And I would say that throughout all these struggles that I have experienced during this quarantine, the friends I've gained, the friends I've lost, the experience I've tried and haven't tried, I would say that it is truly a beautiful experience for me. This is the most beautiful one.
Okay, so thank you for that. So
Mm.
there's still beauty within the deep underlying struggle. That sounds so existentialist in a sense.
Yeah.
So now moving on. So currently with the pandemic, we have been noticing like so much flaws in our system, especially
Mm.
our healthcare system. Our healthcare system, how we were prepared in a sense, prepared during that
Yeah.
time, but however, like over a standard period of time there, we realized na, damn, we could have stopped it from the beginning. We could have not experienced this quarantine, and currently we're still holding our quarantine right now. Everyone's still standing in their houses. I still staying in their houses, while other countries such as New Zealand, Taiwan are slowly opening up, and some states also in the United States, such as Texas, are slowly opening up to the new normal. Now this 2022 is the election, I is the presidential elections of the Philippines. So do you think that the election there's a revitalization of the elections this upcoming 2022, because
I
especially we saw the flaws within our system and also with our leaders?
I would say that there would be a huge revitalization because of the facts that you stated. We as a Filipino people have seen the many flaws within our institutions, such as healthcare, mismanagement of government affairs, and a lot of things that w- I would I would not say that I would say are massive screw ups for our government. For example, our quarantine protocols aren't up to standard with other countries, and we are expecting a lot from a country that does so little because out of all countries in the world, the Philippines has a very unique situation of being an archipelago, and we're doing quarantine protocols in the assumption that we are one united nation, like a one big island, which makes it very complicated because our quarantine protocols are meant for populated areas. However, it's not meant for other parts of the Philippines, such as the more remote locations of our country. And because of that, because of those mismanagement and mishandling of the government protocols and government institutions, such as the infamous PhilHealth uh, event, there would be a revitalization of the Philippine elections because of the fact that slowly but surely critical thinking is developing within the society, not only towards young people, college students who are taking law or whatever, but also with old people who used to firmly believe in their standing and their political beliefs, but now we're slowly turning and seeing that the system is flawed and we should change it. And the only way we can change it is to vote properly, not to vote what they want, but to vote properly.
That's really well said, Ethan. So have you registered already?
No, not yet because I haven't had the time, and I'm planning to register with my relatives, and it's a very tight schedule because of online class and the very fluctuating quarantine announcements. For example, in Cebu City, we have there's rumors of there being another quarantine, so it's very confusing. We can't set a definite date.
I think it's really you can set a schedule, I think, after classes, because if you go nearer to 2022, many people would register and it will take a lot of your time.
True, true. I'll take that in mind. Thank you, Daphne.
Okay, so speaking of elections,
Mm.
who do you think would run as president
Oh, that
for
is difficult
2022?
because at this point anyone can run for the presidency from daughters of actual politicians and to even boxers. So I would say that I wouldn't really have a bias towards a certain politician because it's very wild, mainly because of the qualifications to become a president in the Philippines. Because as far as I know, all you have to do is to be over a certain age and know how to read and write, not necessarily serve in a government office for more than an X number of years. You just have to read and write. So,
Do you see that as an issue?
um, I would say that that would be an issue because the quality of uh, the government office is most it would be mostly decided by the kind of president you have running at the helm. Um, so if our president has barely passed the minimum qualifications in order to run for presidency, I would say that that would be an overall what's this? deterrent or bad, I forgot the word na noon. Overall negative thing to happen to our government, because he just barely passed the qualifications. He hasn't really experienced anything within the government scene, and thus would be, I would say, most likely be controlled or manipulated by his party or the vice president or whatever.
Okay, thank you. So, continuing to that question a while ago. So, for your candidate that you would vote in your ballot, which which definition would you go? Is it a passionate servant leader who is willing to serve his country, his or her or their country, or a person who is competent in working and delivering his or her or they's promises?
I would say that in the current state of the Philippines right now, we need to action towards opening up our country and making everything back the way it once was, because due to the kind of country the Philippines is, we're not that fortunate as other countries who can have these various luxuries in online learning and whatnot. So I would say that the best kind of president for the Philippines now would have to be someone who is willing to do the things in order for the country to grow better. So I would go for the competent one, the competent leader who can deliver in his or her or their promises. However, we should not also forget the other candidate who is a servant leader, because ultimately you're not a person like an almighty being, like God am I kind of person. You're just a person who was voted by the people to lead them towards greater things. You're not some kind of god. You're just a dude with given the power to do things. And I think that quality should be remembered by anyone running for presidency, because power can corrupt even the best of people. So, to answer your question, I would say that a mix of both of the candidates would be the best for the Philippines.
Okay. You spoke about the recovery of the Philippines on your
Mm.
last statement. If you give a prediction, what year would we what year would we slow slowly go back to to growing again, not recovering?
Mm. I would say that it would happen within, at the very least, 5 years, and at the very most, 10 years. Mainly because of the fact that if we look at the way that the Philippines is going right now, we are at we are fumbling when it comes to innovation regarding the quarantine protocols and whatnot. And the thing about innovation is that you must first fail in order to succeed. And right now we are failing really bad. And once you cross that path of failure and mediocrity, is when we can start to grow and innovate for the country. So I would give or take 5 to 10 years, because um, after Duterte's terms ended, a new president would have to step over, and that president would have to do some background work in order, because politics is very complicated. Not only their country politics, but also government politics, like the inner circles, like of how the people's relationships with each other. So once that president has managed to work out and seek a common ground for everyone to work together, then that's when I could say that the Philippines will start to not only recover but do better.
I I hope for the optimism. I hope it's late 4 years from now as we slowly roll out with the vaccines and the protocol slowly goes in. I As the protocols get lesser and lesser stricter over
Mm.
the coming months and days. So speaking about speaking about the economy, one thing that really fascinates me about the Philippines is that we have been focusing on the flaws on the healthcare system, with the educational system, and also with the quarantine protocols, etc., etc. But there's one thing we have been overlooking with with the pandemic, which is the food and agricultural sector, because I am really sure that there is a huge lack in specifically the development and also the mitigation on how to deliver the foods towards the cities, etc., etc. So, do you think that do you think that there should some as you defined a while ago that there should be a failure? Do you think that we are already failing in our agricultural and food sector, that we can have a more sustainable and developing food and agricultural sector where it can feed and where it can feed and supply the needs of the population?
I would say that we have already been failing for years because of the various issues that arose from the agricultural sector. But those were the times when it was at its worst. With, if I remember, we imported rice, which is our main agricultural thing, no? But nowadays, I haven't really seen news of the agriculture sector being as bad. So I would say that we're done with those failures, massive as that. But as of right now, we're still not exactly in the best state. And I would honestly say that out of all of the sectors right now, once the COVID situation is solved, the agriculture sector should be more promoted more and should be invested in more because of the massive potential it has for our country.
Yeah, and then the bad thing about if you work on the agricultural and food sector of the Philippines, there's this stigma, if you agree or disagree with me, that if you're a farmer or if you're a person who helps in the produce sector of the Philippines, that you're quote unquote poor, if you agree with me, because there's like the stigma na ah yung magsasaka ay mahirap, mangingisda ay mahirap. So, do you think in the as we recover slowly and slowly, do you think that the stigma would lift away and then lift away and then surprisingly, what I have read in the previous days, in the previous months regarding about agriculture is a really good business, a good business model. And then for a fact, even the third wealthiest man, which is Bill Gates, he's even he's even investing a huge potential, investing so much of the farmlands in the in United States. So where was I? So do you think that the stigma would lift up as more and more innovators and the bright minds of our country and also from the other countries, specifically Bill Gates, that the stigma of the farmers, the fisher folks are poor?
I would say that slowly but surely the stigma would lift. However, if you're asking for a quick solution, that would not come right after the innovations, mainly because for years and years now, the Philippines has always had this stigma of farmers are poor, don't be a farmer, be a doctor or whatever instead. Yan na. And I would say that that stigma helped propagate the downfall of the agriculture sector of the Philippines, which is a sad thing because the Philippines as a country, as if I remember, I said earlier, relies so much on agriculture. In fact, the same people who would insult agriculture depends on agriculture for their supply of food. They're saying that while eating their dinner, and they're the ones who worked hard in order to raise those crops and give them to you. And I would say that it's kind of dumb. For me personally, the stigma is very un is a very uneducated point of view on farmers as a whole, because you don't see the beauty of their struggle, in order to feed the country. And it's disingenuous to those who want to work in the agriculture sector, because they would be disencouraged from working there. They won't be encouraged to work there, because if you're working there, because the stigma of, if you're working there, then you're poor. And I would say that's a waste of brilliant minds in the Philippines, dude, if that stigma does not disappear. But going back to your question, it would take a long time for that stigma to disappear, unless our country makes a very, very active role in removing that stigma by promoting a lot of agriculture. Because when it comes to agriculture, it's not only dirt that's involved. There's also poultry, there's also fisheries, and there's also many other sectors of agriculture that have yet to be developed because of that stigma that's stayed in the Philippines.
A farmer feeds the rich or the poor.
Mm,
A really good statement on what you said. No matter how rich you are, no matter how poor you are, you're still being fed by a farmer.
mm,
So, speaking of the struggle, we mentioned about existentialism a while ago. So,
mhm.
what are your thoughts on Nietzsche?
I would say that Nietzsche is just a fun guy to read, because he's very cynical in his worldview, no? And it's fine to be cynical, because we have to remember that the world isn't full of rainbows and sunshine and all that positive stuff. And it's good to see the dark side of the world, because if you stay too long on one point of view, you would become immature, because you would expect that the rest of the world would also conform to your beliefs. So I would say that he's a good read from time to time, because um, you have to remember that you always have to be positive, but if you forget the negative, then you're probably not going to live a good life.
Do you think he's the most misunderstood philosopher and the most misquoted? Specifically, the Antichrist.
Mm. Yeah, I would say that he's very misunderstood, because for me, no, I would say that the thing about philosophers is that they're people, or very intelligent people, who give their views on life. And if you if you take that into account and read Nietzsche's works, you would assume that life is now full of really bad things, and that's about it. There is no meaning, there is no God, or whatever. However, the thing about humanity, or the one of the few universal truths that I've observed, is the struggle and the beauty of struggle. And Nietzsche's philosophies work greatly towards emphasizing the negative side of that struggle, wherein, what if there is no God? Then what's the point? What's the point of living? Then his critics would say the point of living is a struggle, and thus the conversation would go on. And I would say that he's misunderstood, in a sense that people read his works only to see that there's a negative view in life, and that's only it. Where Whereas I would say that Nietzsche's works are not only negative, but inspire positivity through the criticisms against his philosophy.
Yeah, that's really well said. Specifically, that Nietzsche, like by reading him, you can assume that guy is like really a bum. He really hates the world. But if
Mm,
you read more of his biography, then you realize that guy was really polite. He's like really polite, and you don't imagine it. Like that guy wrote these books, and then
yeah.
he also mentioned. One thing to mention about Nietzsche, he quoted, and I will quote his quote that it is his ambition to say in 10 sentences what others say in a whole book.
Mm,
That there is like the statement or the pinnacle of his genius, that he can write. he can really write like he can really write those sentences really constructively. Each word plays important role, etc., etc.
Hmm.
So now, speaking of existentialism, do you think that the struggle that we're in right now would help us propel in something greater in the coming future?
Mm, I
Or
would
would it
say
make us weaker?
I would say yes, because the thing about struggle, as we've already established earlier, is that it brings out the person deep inside you that you never knew. And because of and you if the world was really negative, all of us would probably die off all in our homes. However, here we are innovating in various ways, tackling problems that we once never thought about if we were never quarantined, such as how to keep in touch with people far away, not through messenger calls but through formal meetings, how to conduct school and the online platform, how to innovate in technology, because right now, uh, because of the push for a need to improve our technology, we have seen many innovations in the technology world, such as the improvement of what used to be the best PC specs out there. And now we're pushing the limits of what technology can do with the current technology that we have. And I would say, as a species, we really are, even there is still some, or there's still, forgot the question unknown. Oh my god. Uh, excuse me. Could you please repeat that?
Do you think that we would improve from the struggle, or would we go in a downfall spiral?
I see. I see. Okay. Yeah. And not only in the technological side of humanity, but also as the philosophical side, because of this isolation from the people you love, we have been slowly finding out more about ourselves that we really never questioned. We've been talking to ourselves more and finding, exploring the other sides, parts of our mind. And I would say that although we are in a really bad situation, somehow we're still growing in a way that we would have never expected in the past, compared to the past.
So, as we slowly but surely reach the new normal,
Mm,
hopefully by next school year we're gonna have a face-to-face class, etc.,
mm.
etc. Everything's gonna be normalized in the new normal. So, what is one thing that you expect in this new normal? Do you still expect that everyone will be still social distancing, wearing face masks, wearing face shield, or do you see like the old the old the old practices that we did as everyone gets vaccinated, etc., etc.?
I would say that the thing about people is that we cannot change our behavior overnight. We must slowly but surely get accustomed to it. I would say that right after we get our vaccines and all is good with the world, there would still be some aspects of quarantine life that will still stick with us as a society, such as the social distancing, the amount of disinfecting you have to do every 30 minutes or 5 minutes if you're very uh, paranoid about that. However, there are also some things that still stay alive from the old way of thinking, such as hanging out with other people, the contact you have with your close friends, because they probably don't have COVID. And thus, I would say that it would be a very interesting mix of the quarantine life and the life before quarantine that would make up the new normal.
Okay, thank you for that. So, what do you what are you really excited as we reach? What is the thing that really excites you for the new normal?
The thing that excites me the most for the new normal would be how we approach topics that were once very easy for us to handle. For example, how do we handle face to face classes when there's news of the UK COVID variant in Cebu? Would that throw a wrench in our plans? Or how would we handle other issues such that we would have normally taken care of in a snap of a finger? Because we have to remember that it's not like the way it was before. We have to approach it from a different perspective. We have to think about how our solution can help towards the general situation at hand.
So you may agree or disagree with me with this statement. The
Mm,
thing that really excites me as we reach to the slowly but surely reach to the new normal is that there would be less and less misinformation, specifically about the news. As per mentioned earlier, that I we didn't mention this earlier, but specifically about the false information about the vaccines.
mm,
There's false information that there's this nurse who got injected. She quote unquote died, but however she was unconscious. And then another source would say that the vaccines has tracking tracking chips, though
yeah,
it's impossible
nanites.
in their technology. And also there's another source that specifically with the vaccine that we use aborted fetuses because the stem cells, etc., etc. And then more false news, specifically about the left and the right. So
Mm,
the thing that really excites me is that there would be more there would be less misinformation because not everyone would be staring down in their phones, staring down on their phones, using the algorithm on what
mm,
they believe in. So you may agree or disagree with that, but I think that's something that I'm really hopeful as we slowly but surely reach in the new normal because so much misinformation is happening right now. Though Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are spending extensive amounts of research to mitigate and lessen false information, but however there is still false information beneath that information. So that's what
mm,
I'm really excited for
mm,
because I miss reading like the actual newspaper where editors in chiefs really read the news. I really read the articles the night before and they're properly proofread. Not like right now we rely on clicks and the attention span of the people.
mm.
So speaking on the attention span of the people, how's been your attention span during this quarantine? Getting better or is it getting lesser and lesser?
I would say that it is in a state of chaos because at times I can focus or pay attention to important things such as lectures and the Netflix movies that I watch from time to time. And also, my attention span is so short that there have been multiple times that I have wondered, what am I doing in this class again? Oh yeah, major subject. Okay, okay. And then that would go on for the entire lecture. So 50 minutes of me remembering, oh yeah, I have to study. Why am I here again? And my attention span has been in a very interesting state.
So tell me honestly, do you rely on lecture recordings?
No, because as I said earlier, my attention span is very bad, and if I rely on recordings, I would end up just skipping most of the vital parts of the recording and end up okay, so that's it. And then once the exams come up, I would ask, wait, this wasn't discussed, and my friend would tell me, oh, we did in this recording. Like, oh, I skipped over it. All right, that's bad.
And the funny thing about recordings, because I saw a meme the previous
Mm,
day specifically about recordings, if it's If it's 5 days before the exam, the person would watch the recording in 1x speed. As you slowly go closer to that day, it goes on the third day it goes times two. On the fourth day it goes times three. On the fifth
Yeah,
day it goes like more
times
than
five.
times five probably.
Yeah. Um, actually, that would be like if you do that kind of practice, that's very dangerous because you're not watching the lecture in order to learn. You're just watching it for the sake of watching it because you're not really digesting the information given by the lecture in the first place. You're just like, okay, I did it. And it's basically a kind of confidence boost to failure exams, for lack of better words. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna watch this recording, and I can proudly say that I watched this recording. But the question is, have you digested the lesson properly? You know.
And that's the question.
Mm.
Because there's some people that who can digest a great amount of speed in videos. Specifically for me, I watch my YouTube videos at times 2.5 or times 2 depending on how the person speaks, because some people really speak so slow and then it will save me half of the time. But for lectures, in that circumstance, I don't really watch lecture videos now. But what I do on this current sem, because what I did last sem was I was mostly relying
Mhm.
on recordings because my attention span was really soft and slow. Currently, what I do with my recordings is that usually you skip an important part on that meeting. So the good thing about that, you can just like backtrack and then that's what my prof said, or that's what this person questioned during this lecture.
Mm. True, I agree. But then there's another issue when it comes to recordings because, well, it still is a classroom and we are still humans. Some things will end up showing in the recording, such as very interesting things said to students,
So I have a question, like not
Mm.
for you but for like the viewers. Do you skip the for the people who watch like the recordings, specifically those guys who watch it at times 3 speed, times 4 speed? Do you still watch the recordings on on the teachers having a conversation with you? Do you still watch like the good morning class, or do you skip it? So that's my question for the viewers who watch the recordings. I hope they don't.
uh,
Okay, so as we slowly finish, now I would like to ask you on what are your top three reads.
okay, I would say that my top three reads in no particular order would be The Art of War, To Kill a Mockingbird, and I would say that the last choice I would have is The Little Prince. The reason why I chose these three books specifically is because for Art of War, it's information. For To Kill a Mockingbird, is to remove any assumptions you had about people. And for The Little Prince, is to always keep that sense of hope inside you, regardless of any situation, even if you read Nietzsche's works. And if you combine all three together, you would have a very interesting outlook in life. Oh,
Hello.
oh,
It's okay.
uh, my bad. This is also one of the many problems online things is when your device could suddenly cut off. Now, where was I?
You were in the on the statement where these three books will truly help your life.
Ah, so the reason why I chose these three books is because, as I said earlier, they can help you understand life through the lens of an adult, through the lens of an unbiased person, and through the lens of a child. And those three perspectives in life would help you be more intelligent in dealing with situations, to be unbiased in when to be mature when dealing with situations that are very more, I would say, morally complicated, and in dealing with situations that require you to approach things from a different light.
So, speaking about life,
Mm.
Ethan, so what is the
Yeah.
meaning of life?
For me, I would go back to the topic we had before about the struggle of life, because initially, life is like a blank canvas. It's what you paint on it that makes it beautiful. So, to explain this random quote I just said, um, the meaning of life is initially empty. There is no meaning to your life unless you make meaning out of it. It's and how you make meaning out of it is your experiences, your struggles, and all of that makes, and those struggles and experiences make up the person you are today. It's thanks to everything that has ever happened to you that you are a good person now.
Really beautiful and really well said. So, to
Thank
end
you.
the program, would you mind? I will be reading a short poem.
Sure.
So, Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculpture whose those passions read, which yet survive. Stamp on these lifeless things the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing besides remain. Round the decays of the colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So, thank you for being here, Ethan.
Thank you, Daphne.
And also, thank you for the people who are still watching us right now. And then, those people who watch times 3, please answer my question. Do you still watch the good mornings and the chicas in the Zoom recording? So, and on the lecture recordings. So, that's it. And thank you.